Have you ever wondered why, even though you pray every night, it seems like your prayers never get past the ceiling? How many times have you, tired after a long day, tried to talk to God while lying in bed? But deep down, you felt like something was missing. Maybe you've been searching for answers, asking for direction, crying out for miracles, and silence has been the only answer. But what if I told you that there is something subtle, almost invisible, that could be preventing your deeper connection with God? Something that most ignore, but that the Bible warns about. Yes, the position in which you pray can reveal much more of your heart than you realize, and that can make all the difference between a powerful prayer and an empty prayer. In this video, you will discover what the Bible really teaches about praying lying down, why it may be weakening your spirit without you even realizing it, and how a simple change of attitude can open the windows of heaven in your life. By watching until the end, you will understand how to align your posture, your mind, and your spirit to enter into prayer in a way that truly touches the heart of God. You will never see your communion in the same way again, and you will be able to transform empty nights into living and profound encounters with the Father. Now, if you are truly committed to strengthening your prayer life and living a more genuine faith, prove it. Comment now, "I really want to pray." Also, leave in the comments where you are watching so we know how far this message of transformation is reaching. And take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, because here you will find content that challenges, inspires, and takes your faith to another level. Let's go on this journey together. Have you ever noticed how often praying becomes just another automatic habit, like brushing your teeth or turning off the light before bed? It's as if prayer, which should be the most intimate moment of our day with God, has become a formality, or worse, a last breath before falling asleep. Perhaps you too have already laid down, closed your eyes, said a quick prayer in your mind, and before you even said amen, fell asleep. The next day, he woke up feeling like something was incomplete, like he had lost an important connection. And perhaps this feeling will be repeated night after night until prayer stops being an encounter and becomes just a lonely whisper in the dark. The problem is not just in the words, it's on delivery, in posture, in the heart. The truth is that many don't realize it, but the way we pray can say a lot about how we are spiritually. The Bible, full of examples of men and women who place themselves in reverence before God, shows that prayer is not only a spiritual act but also a physical one. And when we ignore this, when we treat the presence of God as something common or commonplace, we end up building invisible barriers between us and heaven. Praying while lying down, for example, seems harmless. After all, God knows our hearts, right? But are we offering our best to Him, or are we giving away our leftovers? Praying lying down may even be convenient, but the question remains, is it reverent? Could it be that when we lie down to talk to the Creator of the universe, are we truly recognizing who He is? You may even think, but I'm tired, God understands. Yes, He understands. But do you understand what you are missing out on by limiting yourself? When we look at the scriptures, we see something surprising. Most of the prayers that moved the heavens were prayed with the body in action, knees bent, face to the ground, hands raised. Why? Because the external posture reveals the internal attitude, and when we place our body in a position of humility, our soul follows. Maybe you've never thought about it. Maybe you think this is all exaggeration, religiosity, or just a detail. But the truth is that the spiritual world perceives what the natural world often ignores. And this difference can be the watershed between prayers that just echo and prayers that generate answers. Now think with me. Would you have the courage to talk to an important authority while lying in your bed? Imagine receiving a visit from the president of the country or a figure you deeply admire and deciding to speak to him lying down, with your eyes half closed, your voice almost disappearing, your body lazy. It seems disrespectful, doesn't it? So why do we treat the King of Kings this way? Of course, there are times when illness limits us, or when physical pain forces us to remain lying down. In these cases, God sees the sincerity and receives the delivery with love. But what about the moments when we have a choice and yet choose the most comfortable position rather than the most honorable? This doesn't just reveal a physical preference, but an inner disposition. It reveals that often the comfort of the body speaks louder than the cry of the soul. Maybe that's why your prayers have seemed empty. Maybe that's why you pray and no longer feel that presence that once warmed your heart. You haven't lost faith. You just got used to it. And this is one of the greatest dangers of spiritual life. Familiarity that takes away fear, routine that erases reverence, comfort that steals depth. But the good news is that this could change today. Throughout this video, you will discover truths you may have never heard. You will see, in the light of the Bible, how small adjustments in the way you position yourself before God can completely restore your intimacy with Him. We are not talking about magic formulas. We're talking about spiritual principles that have worked for millennia and that are available to you now. And I need to tell you, you will never look at prayer the same way again. Prepare to be confronted, yes, but also to be transformed. Because when we stand right before God, inside and out, heaven opens up in ways the world will never understand. This is the kind of connection He expects from you, a whole delivery, not divided. A living communion, not a mechanical one. If you have ever felt that something was missing in your spiritual life, if you have ever prayed with tears in your eyes, but with the feeling that nothing has changed, or if you simply want to experience something deeper, more real, and more powerful with God, then this video is for you. Stay with me until the end, because we will walk together through terrain that perhaps you have never explored. A land where your posture reveals your faith and your reverence attracts glory. Now tell me, are you willing to be challenged, leaving the automatic and entering the supernatural? If the answer is yes, then prove it right now. Write in the comments, "I really want to pray." This is your leap of faith. It's your first step. And tell us where you are watching from, so we can see how far this message is reaching. Take advantage and subscribe to the channel, because what you will hear here could mark the beginning of your prayer life. Have you ever noticed how, throughout the scriptures, physical posture in prayer was never just any detail, but a visible manifestation of interior surrender? At various times in the Bible, we find men and women who understood that the way they approached God revealed how much they honored Him. They knelt, prostrated themselves, tore their clothes, wept with their faces to the ground. And this was not an act. It was surrender. It was the body accompanying the soul. It was reverence overflowing from the inside out. Look at Daniel, for example, a man of prayer. Even though he was threatened with death, he did not stop bending his knees 3 times a day in front of the window facing Jerusalem. He didn't just pray, he took a stand. He understood that even in secret, even alone in his room, the way he presented himself before God was a powerful statement, a dependency declaration of honor, of fear. Or think of Jesus, the Son of God Himself. When He went away to pray, He did so with intensity, with tears, with deep groans. At critical moments like Gethsemane, He threw Himself face down on the ground. He who was the King of Kings humbled Himself before the Father. Doesn't this teach us something? If even the Son bowed, why do we think we can pray anyway, in any position, without even thinking about it? And it's not about religiosity or rigidity, it's a powerful spiritual principle. What you do with your body influences your soul. When you kneel, your heart bows. When you prostrate yourself, your pride is silenced. When you stand in prayer with your body aligned, your mind also aligns. The position is not just physical, she is spiritual. And heaven responds to this. Perhaps right now you are remembering how many times you prayed while tired, lying down, distracted, just fulfilling a religious duty. And I'm not saying that God rejected you. He is Father, He hears, He understands. But there is a difference between being heard and being responded to with intensity, between being tolerated and being attracted with pleasure. And that starts with how you present yourself. Imagine entering a temple in silence, feeling that God is there, waiting for you. Now imagine doing this lying down, unfocused, talking to Him between yawns. Does it seem absurd? But this is how many are treating prayer as if it were any moment. And because of this, they live superficial spiritual experiences, because they offer God a shallow surrender. It's not because He doesn't want to answer. It's because you still don't understand how to position yourself. Have you ever heard of Hannah, Samuel's mother? She prayed with such intensity that the priest thought she was drunk. But it wasn't wine. It was pain. It was an outcry. It was delivery, and it moved heaven. The son she gave birth to was the result of a prayer of her soul poured out, a prayer that was accompanied by posture, crying, groaning, reverence. Perhaps what is missing in your spiritual life is not more words. Maybe it's not knowledge anymore. Maybe it's attitude, posture, reverence. Maybe God is just waiting for you to get out of bed, kneel down beside her and say, "Father, I want more of you." Maybe that's all. But this alone has the power to change everything. And here is something that few talk about. Your posture when praying teaches the spiritual world something. The angels watch, the heavens bear witness, and darkness too. And when you pray with body and soul, with intensity and focus, you send a message. I am positioned. I know who I am talking to, and I came to be transformed. This type of prayer does not go unnoticed. It bothers hell and attracts heaven. Therefore, this message is not a criticism. It's an invitation, a wake-up call, to return to the place of reverence, to restore the essence. Because perhaps you are just a gesture away from a completely new spiritual life. Maybe it's just a change of position, a decision to get out of bed, to stop treating prayer as an obligation, and go back to treating it as a privilege. You know that moment when you're about to sleep, when the body is already relaxed and the mind starts to slow down. It is precisely there that the enemy sows self-indulgence. He doesn't want you to get up. It doesn't want you to kneel, because you know what could happen if you do. He knows that an awakened soul is a threat, that a prayer made with true surrender is a bomb in the kingdom of darkness. And are you going to continue delivering lukewarm prayers between one nap and another? Or will you stand up, literally, and declare, God, I want real fellowship. I no longer want to pray out of habit. I want to pray out of passion. Because when that happens, your life will change, your environment will change, your insides will change, and what was once silence will become an answer. The time has come to wake up spiritually, to stop treating prayer as an expendable moment, to see that when talking to God, you are entering before the throne of the Most High, and that requires posture, not for appearance, but for the essence, by faith, for fear, for honor. And if you understand this, if something inside has started to move, then take action now. Write in the comments, starting today, my prayer will be positioned, not just as a phrase, but as a commitment. Let's together rescue the reverence that transforms. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video. You can be the channel that God will use to awaken someone who is asleep in their faith. When we understand that prayer is an encounter with the eternal, we begin to see it differently, not as a routine or obligation, but as a sacred audience. And every hearing requires preparation. No one appears before a king anyway. There is an order, a respect, an awareness of who is in front of whom. And the same should happen when you decide to put yourself before God. The Bible says that Moses, as he approached the burning bush, heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you stand is holy." This was more than a physical gesture. It was an invitation to spiritual awareness. God was there, and his presence demanded reverence, not because he is a distant God, but precisely because he is a present God. He was revealing himself to Moses, and this required posture, separation, attention. Have you ever stopped to think that perhaps your difficulty in feeling God's presence has nothing to do with his absence, but with your posture before him? God's presence is not only felt with soft music or beautiful words, it is perceived when our heart is awakened and our body follows this awakening. Reverence begins when we recognize that he is there, that it is not just a prayer, but an encounter. And this is where many have gotten lost. They have transformed prayer into something casual, trivialized. They pray in any way, in any position, with their minds in 1,000 places. And then they wonder why they can't hear God's voice, why their faith seems weak, why their inner flame has gone out. But the truth is that superficiality in posture generates superficiality in presence. It's not about religiosity. It is a principle that God himself established throughout history. Notice that the great encounters with God in the scriptures were preceded by a positioning. Elijah prostrated himself with his face between his knees. Nehemiah, before rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, spent days fasting, praying, and crying. Ezra, upon discovering the sins of the people, tore his clothes, fell to his knees, and prayed in public. All these men had something in common: reverence, and it was this reverence that attracted supernatural action. Your posture communicates how much you value that moment. We're not just talking about standing, kneeling, or sitting. We are talking about an awakened spirit, from a body and an attitude of honor, from a focused mind, from an aligned heart. All of this together creates an environment conducive to the manifestation of God's presence. And when this environment is generated, things change. You could even argue that God sees the heart, and it's true, but the heart that truly loves and honors his presence will inevitably influence the body. Whoever loves shows it. Whoever reveres reveals. Whoever wants to be with God prepares for it. It's like a special date. You get ready, organize yourself, position yourself. Why would it be any different with the creator of the universe? There is something powerful about bending your knees, in stopping everything, silencing the mind, putting the body in a position that says, "Lord, I am here, and only you matter now." This sends a clear message to the spiritual world. The heavens bend to listen, because God resists the proud but approaches the humble, and there is no more humble gesture than bowing before the Father. And if up until now you realize that you have been neglecting this principle, don't blame yourself, but don't ignore it either. This revelation does not come to accuse you, but to awaken you. Because what's at stake is not just how you pray, but the level of intimacy you want to achieve. Prayer is the key, but posture is the hand that holds that key. How many times have you tried to pray and been unable to concentrate? It started well, but soon found yourself thinking about the day's tasks, the bills to pay, the family's problems. This happens because the mind needs discipline, and the body can be an ally in this. When you physically position yourself, you send an order to your brain. Now it's time to talk to God, and that completely changes the experience. It is no wonder that so many people report feeling God's presence more when they are kneeling, or in a separate place, or with their body bowed. The external environment helps organize the internal environment, and this is spiritual wisdom. It is aligning everything we are, spirit, soul, and body, to seek him who is worthy of all honor. We are not saying that there is a magic formula or that there is only one way to pray correctly. God is accessible, and grace allows us to talk to him anywhere. But when we understand the power of a reverent posture, we choose the best, not because we need to, but because we want to, not out of obligation, but out of love. If your prayer has become monotonous, perhaps what is missing is not a new word, but a new position. Maybe it's time to get out of bed, off the couch, out of the rush, out of distraction, and build an altar with your own body. A place where God is honored not only with our lips, but with every gesture, where He looks and says, "There is someone who seeks me with his whole heart," because posture transforms the environment, and the environment paves the way for the supernatural. When you begin to pray reverently, something changes. It's as if heaven said, "Now I can act." And when heaven acts, nothing remains as it is. You may have started praying tired, but you will end up stronger. You may have started out discouraged, but you will rise up full of faith. When you understand that prayer is more than just words, you realize that the way you present yourself says a lot about the level of spiritual awareness you carry. We are not facing a casual friend nor an earthly confidant. We are before the Almighty, the God who sustains the universe only with His word. And this awareness changes everything. It not only changes what we say, but how we stand before Him. You may wonder, but does God care how I pray? The answer lies not just in human opinions, but in the Scriptures. Since the Old Testament, God guided His people to purify themselves, to prepare for moments of direct communion with Him. Before Moses went up to the mountain to receive the tablets of the law, the Lord ordered the people to sanctify themselves, wash their clothes, prepare themselves spiritually. It wasn't a whim. It was a teaching about reverence and inner as well as outer preparation. This principle has never changed. Today, we may not wash our clothes as an external ritual, but our heart and posture continue to be called to purification. When you pray anyway, you send the wrong message to yourself, to the spiritual world, and especially to God. That prayer is just another routine activity, not a sacred encounter. If you could see yourself from a spiritual point of view at this moment, you would realize that every time you kneel, bow your head, place your heart in a posture of reverence, you are not only changing your physical position, but you are opening portals into the invisible world. You are creating a spiritual atmosphere around you. You are generating an environment of glory. You know that moment when you feel like words aren't enough, when is just crying, bowing, or simply being silent before God more powerful than any sentence? It is at this point that the posture of the body aligns with the cry of the soul. It's not about number of words, it's about delivery quality, and often true prayer begins when the body is silent, but the soul bows. And there is something even deeper. Your posture in secret determines your impact in public. Jesus taught this simply and directly. He said, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you publicly." It's not about performance, it's about truth, about intimacy, about delivery. When you pray while lying down, without real intention, without focus, without reverence, you are sowing superficiality in your spiritual life. You may not realize it at the moment, but little by little, the soul gets used to the emptiness. And emptiness generates coldness, and coldness generates distance. Until one day you ask yourself, where is that passion I had? Where is that fire? And the answer may lie in the way you have handled your encounters with God. That's why this message is so important, because maybe you're one step closer to rekindling that flame. You may just need to adjust your positioning, physically stand up, bend your knees, close your eyes with intention. Talk to God as someone who truly believes that He is there, hearing every word, feeling every tear, receiving every gesture. There is a type of prayer that attracts the attention of heaven. It's not the longest, not the most eloquent. It's the most sincere, the most reverent, the most aligned between body, soul, and spirit. This prayer is not only heard, it is answered. She moves angels. It changes atmospheres. She opens doors. And it starts with something simple, the decision not to pray anyway. Perhaps you are experiencing silent spiritual battles. Perhaps you are struggling with discouragement, against fear, against the feeling that God is far away. And perhaps, without realizing it, I have fueled these battles with weak, lukewarm, disconnected prayer postures. But the good news is that just as a wrong posture generates distance, a correct posture generates proximity. When you change the way you present yourself before God, you also change the way you experience His presence. And don't think it's too late. It doesn't matter how many years you have prayed automatically. A moment of awakening can transform an entire life. A gesture of reverence today can open a new cycle of spiritual depth for the coming years of your journey. Remember, God is worthy of all honor, all glory, all praise. He is the creator of the heavens and the earth. And at the same time, it is the loving Father who calls you close. What a privilege it is to be able to talk to Him. What an honor it is to be able to stand before the throne. And if you understand this honor, you will naturally want to position yourself differently. It's not about obligation. It's about love, about gratitude, about recognition. When love is real, it manifests itself in actions, and when gratitude is genuine, it shapes even the details of our posture. Therefore, at this moment, I invite you to reflect. How have you presented yourself before God? As someone who understands the magnitude of this encounter, or like someone who got used to it and forgot reverence? This reflection is not to accuse you. It's to remind you of who you are and who He is. And when this consciousness is renewed within us, everything transforms. Prayer ceases to be a ritual. It becomes a privilege, a living experience. A connection that feeds the soul, strengthens the spirit, and transforms the reality around us. Reverence in prayer is not just about God. It's about you too. It's about who you are becoming. Every time you bend your knees, you also bend your pride. Every time you bow your head, you bow your anxiety. Every time you close your eyes and focus on the sky, you close the door on fear and focus on hope. And it is in this way, gesture after gesture, prayer after prayer, that you build a solid, vibrant spiritual life, full of life and divine presence. A life that inspires, that contagious, that reflects the glory of the one who is worthy of everything. If you are determined to live a deeper and more reverent prayer life, comment now. I choose to honor the presence of God. As a form of recognition, we channel "Let's like your comment" and follow your journey of faith and transformation. And if you prepare, what comes next may be exactly what you need to rekindle the fire of your communion with God. Don't miss this opportunity. The next minute could forever change the way you connect with heaven. When a generation becomes accustomed to praying in a superficial way, what is lost is not just reverence, but the spiritual strength that should sustain each step of life. Superficiality in prayers generates superficiality in decisions, feelings, and purposes. And so, almost imperceptibly, we build fragile lives, vulnerable to discouragement, fear, confusion. It is not God who moves away. We are the ones who little by little lose the thread of true connection. This is why the Bible's warning about posture in prayer is not just a matter of form, but a matter of spiritual survival. When you pray with your body too relaxed, without intention, without attention, your soul falls asleep along with it, and a sleeping soul does not discern the voices that echo around it. You lose the ability to perceive God's move, and often fall into the enemy's traps without even realizing it. Jesus warned the disciples in Gethsemane, "Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation." Prayer at that moment was not just a quiet conversation. It was a weapon, a protection, an urgent need. But they, overcome by tiredness, fell asleep. And what happened next was a sequence of falls: fear, escape, denial. All of this could have been different if they had understood the gravity of what was before them. And today, history repeats itself. How many Christians are asleep in their prayer life? How many think that just a whispered word before going to sleep is enough to be in communion with God? How many don't realize that this silent disconnection is the root of so many unwon battles, of so many abandoned dreams, of so many promises that seem distant? If you feel like your faith has been shaken, that your strength is running out, that your hope is weakened, perhaps it's time to look back at the bottom, the prayer, the secret place, the posture before God. Because it is there, in this silent and intimate place, that great victories are born. Not in large public demonstrations, but in small and sincere private deliveries. Perhaps the transformation you seek is not a new strategy, nor a new word of motivation. Maybe it's in the simple act of getting out of bed, bending your knees, silencing your heart, and talking to God with all your soul, as if this were the last opportunity to spill what's inside you. Because in some ways, each prayer can be the most important. When you pray anyway, you run the risk of building a superficial relationship with God. And superficial relationships don't withstand storms. They're like houses built on sand. All it takes is a stronger wind to collapse them. But when you decide to build your relationship on reverence, on surrender, on intentional pursuit, you are laying foundations on solid rock. And even if the winds blow, your faith will remain standing. We cannot forget that prayer is more than a devotional habit. It's a battle. It's a portal. It is a renewed alliance with every word, with every gesture. And as in every battle, posture matters. Have you ever seen a soldier fighting lying down, relaxed, distracted? Impossible. The readiness position is what determines the ability to resist and win. Spiritually, it is no different. Your prayer posture reveals whether you are prepared for the invisible battles unfolding around you. If you pray with intensity, focus, reverence, you become stronger. You have authority. You position yourself as a true warrior of the kingdom. It is no exaggeration to say that many spiritual defeats begin with neglect of prayer posture. It seems like something small, insignificant, but in the spiritual world, small details become gateways to big victories or big defeats. And you need to choose, every day, which side you want to be on. The good news is that the decision is in your hands. It doesn't matter what it's been like so far. What matters is what you do from now on. Each new day is a new opportunity to rebuild your prayer altar, to strengthen your communion with God, to align your body, mind, and spirit with eternal purpose. You can start today. You don't need big rituals or difficult words. All it takes is a sincere gesture, a firm decision, a true delivery. Get up, bend your knees, close your eyes with intention. Speak to God as one speaks to the King of Glory, and you will see how the environment around you will begin to change. And as this practice becomes a lifestyle, you'll realize something even deeper. It's not just your prayer that will change, it will be you. Your mind will be renewed. Your spirit will be strengthened. Your vision will be expanded, because whoever learns to pray with reverence also learns to live with purpose. And in the end, the big difference between those who just survive and those who truly win in spiritual life is not just in what they say, but in how they experience each encounter with God. Each prayer is a seed planted in eternity. Each gesture of reverence is a silent declaration. Lord, you are worthy. I acknowledge you. I surrender. And before a soul like this, God does not remain silent. He acts. It transforms. He rewards because he honors those who honor him. Reverence in prayer is not just an external sign of respect, but an internal key that opens doors in the spiritual world. It's as if, by aligning your body and heart, you are saying to heaven, I am ready, I am attentive, I am here to listen and obey. And this disposition does not go unnoticed before God. On the contrary, it attracts his attention in a powerful way. Many believe that to live great spiritual experiences, they need big events or spectacular encounters. But most of the time, God's supernatural reveals itself in the simple, in the closed room, in the silent dawn, in the humble gesture of someone who bends their knees when no one is looking. It is in these secret places that the giants of faith are formed. And it is important to understand that we are not talking about merit, as if physical position guarantees automatic blessings. It's not about conquering God through gestures. It's about aligning body, soul, and spirit, so that prayer is genuine, deep, and full of life. It's about preparing your entire being to meet your Creator with reverence and love. Think of Samuel as a boy, hearing God's voice for the first time. He wasn't in a big temple full of lights. He was lying down, but when he heard the voice of the Lord, his posture changed. He got up, he went to Eli. He was awake, attentive, ready to respond. "Speak, Lord, for your servant hears." This is the spirit that God seeks. Souls that have not become accustomed to the sound of the divine presence. Souls that rise promptly with reverence and willingness. And here's a crucial point. How you stand before God in secret shapes how you stand before life in public. When you cultivate a life of reverent prayer, you begin to carry a quiet authority, a presence that comes not from titles or human words, but from true intimacy with the Father. Have you ever noticed that some people, even without saying much, carry a peace, a firmness, an impressive clarity? This is not built on speeches or appearances. This is forged in the secret, on the personal altar of prayer, in the silent reverence that no one sees, but that God transforms into visible strength. Therefore, do not underestimate the importance of adjusting your posture before God. Don't think it's just a detail. It is a spiritual language. It's a silent response that echoes much louder than empty words. And when you adopt this posture, something within you begins to be aligned with the sky. You begin to pray with more faith, begin to better discern the voice of God. You begin to see doors opening that previously seemed locked. Because the Holy Spirit moves where there is honor, where there is reverence, where there are hearts willing to bow, to listen, to obey. And this change doesn't have to be dramatic or theatrical. It starts within, in small gestures, in daily decisions. How to choose to bend your knees instead of simply speaking while lying down. How to take a few extra minutes to quiet your mind before you start praying. How to set aside a place in the house to be your personal altar. Small choices that, made consistently, create big transformations. You will notice that as you practice this reverence, your prayers will take on a different weight. These will not just be words in the wind, they will be statements full of faith, of purpose, of truth. And this difference over time will produce visible fruits in your life. And here's another secret. When you change your posture in prayer, you also begin to change your posture in the face of life's problems. You begin to face struggles with more courage. You start to face challenges more wisely. Because whoever kneels before God does not bow before the giants of life. This is a powerful truth that many overlook, and that is why so many lie overwhelmed by problems, tormented by anxiety, paralyzed by fear, because they lost the practice of positioning themselves correctly in the spiritual and consequently became vulnerable in the natural. But today, you have the opportunity to do something different, to build a solid foundation, to restore the altar, to return to the essence of true prayer, one that comes from a reverent heart, willing to obey. Not an automatic prayer nor a superficial one, but a prayer that touches the heart of God and transforms your own life. You will notice that as your posture changes, your spiritual sensitivity will increase. It will become easier to discern God's voice amid the noise. It will become more natural to feel the leading of the Spirit in important decisions, because the reverent heart is like fertile soil for the seeds of heaven. And that's just the beginning, because God specializes in taking willing hearts and taking them to levels they never imagined. But it all starts with one simple step: a sincere gesture. A firm decision to say, "Lord, I want to stand before you with all the reverence you deserve." This decision changes everything, and it is within your reach now. It's not about perfection, it's about intention. It's about putting God back at the center, about making prayer not just a moment, but a life, a style of being, a daily response to the call of the Father who, day after day, invites us to come closer. And as you respond to that invitation with reverence and truth, you will discover a new level of communion, a new level of strength, a new level of purpose. Because true spiritual transformation does not happen on big stages, but in small gestures made with love and fear. Perhaps, while listening to this message so far, you felt your heart burn, as if somewhere inside you something is being awakened. It's no coincidence. It is the Holy Spirit calling you back to the place where true strength is born. The place of reverence, the place of surrender, the place of living prayer. The generation that rises up in prayer is the generation that changes realities. And you were called to be part of it, to be someone who does not bow before the pressures of this world, but who bows only before the King of Kings. And this difference begins in the details that the world disregards, in gestures that many consider small, but which are giants in the eyes of heaven. It is interesting to see how the great stories of the Bible began in moments of deep prayer. Moses received the direction to free an entire people in an intimate encounter with God. David, before being crowned king, cultivated years of sincere conversations with his father while tending the sheep. Jesus, before each important decision, withdrew to be alone with the Father. Everything begins in secret. Everything is born in reverence. Therefore, do not despise the power of a bent knee, a focused mind, a broken heart. It is in these gestures that you build an unshakable relationship with God. And it is this relationship that will sustain you when everything around you seems to be falling apart. In times of confusion, fear, uncertainty, those who have a solid prayer altar find peace where others only see chaos. He finds direction where others are lost. Find the strength to start over when many give up. Because whoever learns to hear the voice of God in the stillness of reverence never walks alone. And that's the kind of life God dreamed for you. A life where prayer is not an obligation but a pleasure, where the search for God is not a burden but a passion, where every word spoken in secret generates fruits that manifest themselves in the visible. A life that even in the midst of struggles shines with the light of divine presence. But this life is not for the hasty. It is not for those who treat God superficially. It is for those who decide to value the encounter, honor presence, position yourself with reverence and faith. It is for those who understand that prayer is the greatest treasure we can carry, a treasure that transforms everything it touches. And here is a principle that needs to be engraved in your heart. The way you treat the moment of prayer reveals the way you treat God Himself, not just in the words you say, but in the intention with which you present yourself. If God is important to you, meeting Him will be too. And this will be reflected in every gesture, every attitude, every minute dedicated to this communion. Imagine if, every time you prayed, you remembered who you were about to meet. Imagine if, before you began to speak, you stopped for a moment to recognize His majesty. Imagine if, as you bend your knees, you could feel that you are being welcomed by the King of Heaven Himself. This awareness would change everything. You would change your words, change your focus, change your faith. And this change is within your reach. It starts with a gesture today, a small step, but full of intention. Maybe today, when you finish this video, you will decide not to just pray lying down, like so many previous days. Maybe today, you will stand up, kneel, reverently close your eyes and say, "Father, I am here to hear you, to honor you, to truly seek you. And do you know what happens when someone makes that decision from the heart? The sky moves. The presence of God manifests itself. He speaks. It transforms. And as this practice is repeated, day after day, something extraordinary happens. Prayer stops being a sporadic event and becomes a lifestyle. And then you start to carry the presence of God, not just in your room, but in every room you enter. You become a bringer of glory, a living instrument of the kingdom. The world may not understand. You may think it's an exaggeration. You can call it fanaticism. But those who live this reality know there is nothing more precious than feeling the presence of God pulsing within you. There is no human achievement, success, or recognition that compares to the joy of being in true communion with the Father. And that communion is built on reverence, in recognition of the holiness of God, in the humility of placing yourself before Him as someone in need, as someone who loves, as someone who surrenders. Today, you are being called to this transformation, for this return to first love, for this reunion with the true essence of prayer, not as an empty ritual, but as a living, powerful, renewing encounter. And remember, every decision you make in secret is seen by the Father. Every gesture of reverence, every effort to honor Him, every moment of sincere surrender. All of this is recorded in heaven. All of this has eternal weight. All of this generates fruits that you may not even imagine now, but which, at the right time, will manifest themselves in a glorious way. So don't put it off any longer. Don't leave it for later. The invitation is made, the path is open. All it takes is a step of faith, a gesture of reverence, a decision to say, Lord, I want to return to your heart. And when you do, all of heaven celebrates, because God always responds to those who seek Him with all their heart. We've come this far, and if you've stuck with me this far, it's because something inside you is crying out for more. More presence, more reverence, more depth in your life with God. Throughout this video, we travel a path of revelation and spiritual awakening that can no longer be ignored. We talk about the importance of posture in prayer and how this goes far beyond a physical position. It is an inner attitude that communicates honor, fear, and surrender. We saw that the Bible is full of examples of men and women who not only prayed, but stood with their body and heart before God. Daniel, Jesus, Hannah, David, they all had something in common. They knew that the way they placed themselves before God determined the level of intimacy, direction, and transformation they would experience. We understand that reverent prayer doesn't just move heaven, it shapes the prayer, and that the body, when it bows, teaches the soul to obey. You learned that praying lying down, out of comfort, tiredness, or inattention, may seem harmless, but spiritually, it can be the beginning of a silent and profound disconnection. Not because God rejects those who pray sincerely, but because reverence demonstrates how much you truly value that moment. And where there is honor, there is glory. Where there is delivery, there is presence. Where there is positioning, there is transformation. We talk about how the spiritual world responds to the way we present ourselves, that reverence attracts the sky and bothers the darkness, that bending the knee is not just a nice gesture, it is an act of war, of surrender, of alliance, and that many invisible defeats begin when prayer becomes an empty ritual. But we also discover that all restoration begins when we decide to come before God with a broken heart and an attitude of wanting more. Now, it's your moment. And I don't say that as a cliche. I speak because truly, ordinary people who make bold spiritual decisions become extraordinary instruments in the hands of God. And if you've made it this far, it's because you're not just anyone. It's because there is something special calling you to this new time, a time of real communion, of living prayer, of deep relationship with the Father. And now I ask you, will you let this message pass like another video, or will you respond as someone who understood the call? If you are really determined to live a new spiritual dimension, try it right now. Comment below. I'm going to rise up to pray. This is not just a sentence, it's a commitment. It is a spiritual seal. It is a mark of those who do not live in superficiality, but delve into what really transforms. And we at the channel will leave a like on your comment in recognition of your commitment. We want to see who are those who go beyond theory, who decide to act, who assume their faith with courage. And if that word reached your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Send this video to as many people as possible. There are many people who are losing themselves in distraction, in tiredness, in spiritual coldness, and perhaps this message is what was needed to awaken a sleeping soul. Oh, and before you leave, subscribe to our channel. If you've made it this far, it's because this content made sense to you. And we have many others who will strengthen you, confront you, inspire you, and take you even deeper into the presence of God. And now, I want to give you a final challenge. What was the code that turned the key inside you? Comment below. We want to know which part spoke most to your heart. Your answer might resonate with someone else in the comments. It might be exactly what someone needed to read today. And before you leave, be sure to watch the 2 videos that will appear on your screen now. Each of them was chosen to take you even further on this journey of faith and depth. It's not just more content. These are essential next steps towards the transformation you so desire. What you started here continues there, and the next click could be the turning point that was missing in your spiritual journey. You are not just anyone. You are different. And whoever is different, sometimes different, lives differently and transforms everything around them.